New scuffles broke out in a separate area as the standoff between Chinese and Indian border troops enter the third month in the Doklam area. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on Monday China has verified that on August the 15th, the normal patrol conducted by the Chinese border troops near the Pangong Lake in the western part of the China-India boundary was obstructed by the Indian border troops, and that the Indian side took violent action to collide and scuffle with the Chinese side, injuring some Chinese personnel. Meanwhile, Indian Minister for Home Affairs Rajnath Singh expressed hope on Monday that the deadlock will be broken soon, saying India wants to maintain peace with all its neighbours. Will the border standoff come to an end soon, and what is behind the skirmish near the Pangong Lake? For more insight, I'm pleased to be joined in our studio by Rong Ying, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies, and in New Delhi by Binod Singh Ajachatru, Director of the Brics Institute. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Explain a little bit to us the situation. Where exactly is Pangong Lake? Is there any dispute of territory between China and India in that part?
Well, the Pangong Lake is in the western sector of the border between China and India, and it is, I have to recognize that there's a dispute between the two countries, even though there's, I think, from the Chinese perspective, that the line of actual control of 1959 is very clear, and it is also well known to the Indian side. And there's also agreement that the two sides, we should, while pending the resolution of the disputes, the two sides should take effective measures and to respect the line of actual control, so that to ensure the peace and tranquility of the boundary between the Chinese and the Indians.
Mr. Singh, according to the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Chinese soldiers were conducting normal patrols on China's side. How come these Indian soldiers appear there? What is the Indian explanation of the scuffle?
First of all, we condemn what happened, and as per the international norms, I think Chinese PLA should say sorry to Indian Army, because it was not a just normal day. It was a 71st Independence Day of India, and on this particular occasion, what is the tradition between the armies at the border? We try to exchange sweets, we try to congratulate each other, we try to celebrate it. But this is the first time in the history, and it rarely happens, that Chinese PLA choose a time when Indian armies was busy in celebrating the independence and listening to the speech of Prime Minister, that they tried to cross the so-called perceived border and tried to indulge. When Indian army, the RTBP, the borders guard, they saw it, they tried to go with the white flag, they tried to request them that they should, go back to their normal area. As you know, that this side is controlled by China after the war. This didn't belong to China before 1962, and the total bargain is that China is claiming another part in eastern sector, and China is waiting that if in case they get that part, they will try to return this Aksai Chin, the southern part of China. So I would like to say that in India, people are very unhappy. They didn't think this is a civilized way of Chinese army to choose a date, which is the Independence Day of India, and resort to something which is very, very bad. Even Pakistani and Indian soldiers don't know that.
Mr. Rong, yes, Mr.
Coming
Rong,
with the rods, attacking the Indian army.
I got your point, Mr. Singh. Mr. Rong, what is your reaction to what Mr. Singh said?
I think if anybody would like, if there's an apology that has to be made, it should certainly should the Indian side, as we all know that at the delimited section of the Chinese and the Indian border, the Indian border troops illegally crossing the border and provoked an incident that had not resolved for past for 2 years. And I think as I said very clearly, that is the line of actual control is very clear. and the Chinese border troops is conducting normal activities. And it is the Indian side, I think, that has, that creating trouble, that disturbing the normal activities. I think if the Indian side has any reason and any sense of respecting international norms or international law, it should, I think, as we made very clear, that it should not do had been done by crossing the delimited boundary of China and India.
There are some
the second sector.
Sure, there are some amateur videos which are circulating on the Chinese internet, and which is claimed to be the video of the actual skirmish between the two troops. And if we can have that video at this moment, let's take a look at that. Mr. Singh, you were talking about some white flags being used here. I don't actually think that we see any white flags. Actually, there are some red flags, or one red flag, if you look really carefully, that's being waved there, being held there. Mr. Singh, what is your, have you seen this video? What is your possible explanation to the color of the flag that we're seeing here?
The video is not very authentic, but what we see and what any layman can analyze is very clear that the Chinese PLA is trying to show his kung fu skills by jumping from the top of the high land there and jumping over, and he has already injured 2 Indian armies that day. And also Chinese army were discovered with, rods there. So Indian has to just defend there. Now, if you see the ITBP, it was on the which side of the army? It was on the right side of the army. PLA was on the left side. So if you connect all the video footage, you find where Kung Fu comes from China, not from India.
Well, Kung Fu, a lot of people practice Kung Fu as well, and when you just push somebody, you don't need Kung Fu, right? You just need 2 arms and a little bit of strength, you can push somebody. You can't really say that this is Chinese Kung Fu that we're seeing on that video, Mr. Singh.
Madam, I'm sorry to say that, China has a way of dealing with border issue. In 1969, when there was a problem with Russia on the Ussuri River, again, China resorts to jostling. Whatever videos you find on amateur videos, what you see is that Chinese soldiers and Indian soldiers, they say first word, everything is clear, everything is clear. There's a problem of language. The 2 armies can't talk to each other. The English skill of Chinese PLA is not good enough to negotiate there. I think they should train some Hindi speakers or Indian language speakers.
What about having the Indians speaking Chinese?
Even some good in English will be fine. So,
I feel shocked that for the views of my friend, my young friend, I think so taking such a biased view about the incident. First of all, I think I don't know on what ground you can defute on a video whether it is authentic or unauthentic. Secondly, I think you raised an issue that is unrelated to the conversation about the boundary disputes and the incident between China and the former Soviet Union. And what I want to make it very clear is that if the Indian side had respected the line of actual control of 1959, and then there was no incident like that. You have to be very clear. If you look at the ground situation, the line of actual control has not been respected. Line of LAC of 1959. And if India kept on doing like this, there will be more trouble, more incidents like that. We have enough incidents, and we have an incident that is at the Donglang. And I think just now you talked about apology. I think certainly the Indian side, your border troops owe an apology. More than that, I think the Chinese government has made it very clear a thorough investigation has to be made, and there will be actions that have to be taken. If you don't take people like you, keep on talking about that, keep on telling lies like that, there will be big trouble, not only for our border troops, for our boundary, but also for our 2 countries. Are you going to take a responsibility like that? I hope you take a clear view about that.
I'm not here going to, excuse me, I'm not going to here, fight with you.
No, I'm not.
About the issue, not
we are
to fight
civilians.
Issue,
we're not going to certainly fight.
you are
but
fighting.
this isn't a conversation.
I mean, you should.
It should
you
be a
should
conversation
understand there's a
based on
language.
facts, based
Yes.
on
Allow me
accepted
to speak.
rules.
Okay,
Come
Mr.
on.
Singh,
Allow
please
me
go
to
ahead.
speak.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to put my point very clear that if there's a problem between Indian Army and Chinese PLA, they have their mechanism to sort it out. We should not fight here in the TV studio for that issue, first thing. Second issue, if there's a misunderstanding and misperception about the line of actual control, that is the main issue between India and China. How can you claim that there's no problem? So what I find Mr. Rongi is that he has already set up his mind that all the problem is from Indian side. China has no responsibility. China has no problem with any other country. It has problem with 18 countries, 18 neighbors in South China Sea. It has problem with all the neighbors. It
I
has
have no
sorted out one
idea
or two.
where did
I
you
would like to say
get
that,
that
it doesn't
18
happen just from one
members
side.
of countries along
Yeah.
South China
Well,
Sea.
China never
Just
claimed.
let me tell
You
you
should
which
talk to-
18 countries
you should-
they are. But what I know that
should-
India has many
the
country
time is-
problems with all your
You
neighbors.
can take your books.
That
it's
is the
all
fact.
in the public.
If we are going to have a real conversation, please
ex-
respect the fact, Mr. Singh.
Yeah, China doesn't say that it has
Please try to
resolved
speak
all
the
the
journalism language, yeah.
Well, I think Mr. Rong has not used any vulgar languages
Listen.
here. He's just
Listen,
making his
listen.
points. Okay, go ahead,
Listen.
Mr. Singh. Yes.
All the problem this time has just one core issue. The language used by Chinese experts, Chinese media, not by Chinese ministry, but by this Chinese so-called expert who happens to be an ex-diplomat serving in different countries
which
and also India expert.
criteria
I
give
think
you-
unless and until they restrain.
Give you the right
Allow me to finish.
to say,
Allow me to finish.
to
Don't
say
shout.
the
Don't
so-called
shout. Don't
so-called
shout.
expert.
Allow me to finish.
I'll certainly
I
ask
think-
you to finish.
Are you saying
but
that-
it has to
I
be
think
based
Liu Xin
on
is a very
facts.
good host.
If you
Thank
really
you very
want
much.
to do
Yeah,
a
make
conversation,
the
I
point.
think Liu
Yes,
Xin is a
please.
very good host.
But
And she would allow us, she would allow us to finish one side and the next side will respond. I just make it very brief that the issue should not have blown up so high and so long. We are going into third month. Just because if you can restrain your so-called state-sponsored media like Global Times and some so-called, part-time India scholars. None of you are full-time India scholars, neither Mr. Rongi. So now you're just coming to the studio and trying to make
well,
everything
there are also a lot of
blame on the
newspapers. Yes,
Indian.
Mr.
This
Singh,
is not
I'm
the
running.
way diplomacy.
Mr. Singh, I got your point. I
This
got
is-
your point.
This is
There are-
not. See,
Mr. Singh, I got your point. I have to control
I
the
just
time
want to
here.
say last point.
Okay,
last
go
point
ahead.
is
One
that-
sentence, please.
Just last point, that we cannot talk to media. Yeah, we cannot talk to media or Global Times. We should talk to the Foreign Ministry of China. That's the point.
Well,
And that's
yeah.
why Home Minister
well,
Rajnath Singh
the
has said
Chinese Foreign Ministry
that
has
right
said
now
that
the
they are
talk-
not closed
the
to,
right now is the
to
talk
dialogue. Mr. Singh, if I give you the time to talk, you should also know when to stop because
Yes,
I'm really running out
that's
of
a
time.
very good news, yeah.
I gave you the opportunity to speak. So I get your point, and the Chinese Foreign Ministry has said they're open to negotiation, but there is some precondition that the Indian troops have to be out of this Doklam area or retreat back to their side of the border. To the Bhutanese side of the border first. Anyway, another heated discussion. It's quite unfortunate that every time we talk about the border step, it gets a little bit out of control. I hope the situation on the ground will not continue to go out of control. Mr. Ronging, thank you very much, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies, and many thanks to our friend from New Delhi, Mr. Binod Singh Ajashatru, Director of the Brics Institute. I still have to make my point. Imagine you are dissatisfied with what a neighbor builds in his garden. Instead of lodging a protest with him, you go straight into the garden and stay there in order to achieve your goal. In fact, it's not even your next door neighbor, it's your neighbor's neighbor. You think your next door neighbor's rights are being infringed upon and you take action on his behalf. That's how the Chinese see the Donglang standoff or the Doklam standoff. To resolve it is actually quite simple, right? Stop the trespassing, go back to your home, and then people can sit down and talk, but not while the trespassing still goes on. I really hope the situation doesn't continue like this. You have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll